Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I really would request your attention. I don't get on the back mic often, as most of you know. I do not jump up to speak against people's bills. Members,
can we have order?
the reason I'm here today, members, is when I caught something in this bill that I thought went against the spirit of what probably all of us here are fighting for, which is to protect the Constitution and to give people due process. Earlier today, when I looked in this bill, I noticed two things that stood out, and Representative Navarez just talked about a couple of them. What this bill does, members, is something that has never happened. It is the antithesis of what we voted for. The intent of the bill, members, was to make sure that people didn't have to go to jail for a fine misdemeanor, a misdemeanor that was punishable by a fine. But then it turned right back around and undid it and made it worse by adding something that says, unless the person presents appropriate identification. The fact pattern that concerned me, members, was, and I'll give you this, if you'll just indulge me. I have an 18-year-old nephew who lives in a very nice neighborhood, and he goes swimming a lot in his gated community. If my nephew were coming back from the swimming pool and didn't have his ID on him and was jaywalking, and an officer pulled him over and asked for his ID, he could go to jail if he gave him his Episcopal High School ID because it's not appropriate. He could go to jail if he said, well, I have a library card, officer, it's not appropriate. He could go to jail if he said, I don't have anything because I have on my swimming trunks and my flip-flops and I only live over there. So, members, I don't think that that was the spirit and the intent of what we were trying to do. Also, on the underlying bill, it talks about getting arrested if someone believes that you won't show up.
Speaker.
I don't know.
Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
Would the lady yield
Lady
for
yield.
a minute for questions?
Yes, I
Lady
will.
yields.
Now, the bill says you have to have what's called an appropriate ID. Is that right?
The amendment said that, and there's a part in the initial page 1 of the
No, it
bill
said
that they're
that.
going to study for an appropriate ID.
What
Yes, sir.
does the bill describe what an appropriate ID is?
No, Mr. Chairman, there's no definition. There's no definition in the bill or legal definition for appropriate.
So it's going to be subjective on the part of the person making the stop.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, now, that's not how it works currently, is it?
No, it's not.
No, and so this represents a complete departure from where the law is today.
Yes, I actually mentioned, Mr. Chairman, when I had my conversations, and members, just so you know, out of respect, this isn't a blind side. I've been having this conversation for about 3 hours today. I went to Representative White and talked to him about it, and I had a lot of conversation with him, and I told him that in my estimation, this was turning our Constitution on its head. And I asked him, well, what was the intent of the bill? And he may come and speak on it, but he did say it was to lower probable cause.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about the other part of the bill, which really creates a problem for me. It makes it subjective on the part of the officer as to whether or not he or she believes you might show up for a court date. Is that still in the bill?
That is still in the bill, Mr. Chairman. That is one of the grounds to be able to arrest the person for a crime that are a misdemeanor that's punishable.
So that's going to put a lot of police officers in jeopardy because they're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not they believe you will show up in court. And let me ask this, what will they use as the basis for making that determination?
That's why this is so important, Mr. Chairman. There is no way, there's nothing in the bill, there's no parameters or metrics to know whether someone is going to show up, and there's no way in life to determine that. I don't know if I can look at any representative in here and know if he or she is coming to court.
If I have a coat and tie on, I guess it will presume that I will show up in court, right?
I wouldn't even go that far. Who knows, depending on who you are wearing that coat and tie.
So if I'm, like I usually do on Saturdays, cut my yard, I dress appropriately for cutting my yard, but sometimes I go to the service station to get gasoline, and I may be on the way back, and I may not have ID either, but I'm dressed not like you've seen me before, but so is it likely that I'm going to show up in court based on how I'm dressed?
Well, that's the problem, Chairman Dutton. There's no definition. And I will say this, members, I haven't gotten involved on any criminal justice issues. This concerned me. I walk my dog at night, and I just take my cell phone. And I certainly wouldn't want to be blessing a bill and voting for a bill that would allow me to be arrested because I didn't have the, quote, appropriate ID. I maybe would have my phone.
Whatever that
would
yes.
mean, and that if I did something such as walk across the street and jaywalk. And I don't think that any member here would support that. This isn't a black, white, Democrat, or Republican issue. This is a constitutional issue and something that's fair and reasonable.
Well, it certainly infringes on that because it presumes that if you don't, that the law officer can make a better decision about whether you'll show up in court or not, rather than relying on you to make that determination for yourself.
Absolutely, and that's new. That's new in the bill, members. That's something that we didn't have before. The officer will make that unilateral decision is if you look like you're going to show up. If not, you'll be arrested. And so
do we make that, allow that determination be made in any other part of the penal code or statutes or anything, anywhere?
It's my understanding, Mr. Chairman, if you sign the citation when we get a traffic ticket, that the presumption is that by signing that, we're promising to appear. And that in and of itself is enough. So if any of us get a traffic ticket, thank you, Mr. Dutton. Okay. Members, with that, I urge you, we're going to reconsider this bill, and I urge you all to vote no. For reasonableness. This goes beyond the scope of anything I will tell you that any of us could have fathomed constitutionally. Thank you, members.